Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, CJ Stewart. And he's got a very interesting background. He is the Chief Visionary Officer at Lead Center for Youth. We'll find out what the lead means. And he's actually a former Chicago Cubs outfielder. And he's doing a lot with professional, amateur, top athletes, and I'm really happy to have him on the show. CJ, welcome.
Yes, I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, how you got there, and what you do.
Yes, so I am CJ Stewart. I'm 48 years of age and I was born and reared city of Atlanta, the inner city of Atlanta. I am an African American man that baseball was my ticket out of poverty. And I'm married to an amazing African American woman, Kelly Stewart. And we have two daughters, Mackenzie and McKenna. And I bring up these to say about me because being able to survive the city of Atlanta was a challenge and still is. In the city of Atlanta, if you're born into poverty today, you have a 4% chance of making it out. And the city of Atlanta is number one for income inequality based on race in America. And America is number one for income inequality based on race among the G7 advanced countries. The fact that my wife Kelly and I are business owners and thriving and leading in this city is nothing short of a blessing. And we're using our success to serve others.
Yeah, I love how you describe because everybody has their ticket to a better future, and I'm glad the really intelligent ones figure out what that is and then use that as a ticket, a stepping stone to do greater things, which sounds like what you and your wife are doing. So what is Lead Center for Youth? And again, it's an acronym. So what do you guys do and what's your USP and for the audience just to get started?
Yes, so LEAD stands for Launch, Expose, Advise, Direct. And we are a sports-based youth development organization. And we use the sports of baseball for boys and tennis for girls to help them overcome three curveballs that threaten their success, which is crime, poverty, and racism. And so we have year-round programming, partnering with Atlanta Public Schools for our elementary and middle school programs. And then at the high school level is our national select team. And so to earn the opportunity to be on those teams requires commitment, discipline, and a lot of talent. And so what's beautiful about that is it gives kids who are starting our organization as early as third grade who are very new to the sports, it gives them the time that they need so that they can get good and be able to do it right in their own community. And so our pillars of excellence that holds up Launch, Expose, Advise, Direct is athletics, which is baseball and tennis, academics, civic engagement, and commerce. And for us, we're more than just bats and balls and rackets and balls. We're really positioning our kids when we talk about being major league citizens. We're talking about individuals that are faithfully employed, civically engaged, radical philanthropists that look like his future mayors of Atlanta, folks involved from the religious sector, business owners. So we're really excited about pouring into them because it'll make retirement really good for me.
Yeah, a really interesting lead in. And what's interesting is I really love this idea because United States is not equal. You have a opportunity, but it's not equal opportunity and it's not equal outcomes. One of those things is racism, and it's a big problem. I'm Asian and I experience racism too. So yeah, how do you teach the kids they're good kids and then basically they come across a bad apple and then experience racism? How do you teach them to adjust and continue to move forward?
The first thing that we do is just help them to understand that when it comes to racism, before it's about people, it's about power. And when you unpack that power, it is influence, which is money. I'm sorry, influence, which is relationships, and which is money. And it's a race. So that means there's somebody at the bottom. That means there's somebody at the top. And racism isn't somebody calling you the N word or some other derogatory slur. It is a system of oppression. And so we start looking at outcomes that we have specifically in Atlanta, but they're very similar throughout the country. Outcomes around education, healthcare, housing, being employment. There are some systems that, let's just start from the standpoint of prejudice. Prejudice in it of itself isn't harmful until we start using it to disadvantage other people. But people having prejudice towards other races, genders, and religion, for me, it's just a starting point to ask questions. So I'm making assumptions, which there are assumptions that I can make about you because you are an Asian American. And so with those assumptions, things that I'm feeling, it becomes facts when I ask you the question and you either say it's false or it's true. But when we bypass prejudice and just start making decisions on people, systematically doing it to the point where we're having health disparities, employment disparities, education disparities based on race, that is racism. And just helping them to understand, specifically in Atlanta, the poverty that we're experiencing is no indictment on Black people for being Black. We have to look at the systems that are causing the oppression. So that's a starting point, but we have to really make sure that we build up their positive identity to just help them to understand that regardless of their socioeconomic background, everywhere they go, they start with assets. Just making sure they're in the right place at the right time, being served by the right people.
Really interesting. Because I was just curious myself, because when I was growing up, it was impressed that we have to play a different game. There's the game for the whites, and then there's the game for and you have to navigate and be a bit more strategic. And sad, but that's what I wanted to ask you. So you do a lot of good stuff. And one thing in the sports is a great way to impart really good values. And what are the 9 traits that support SEL and how baseball helps nurture them?
Yeah. So one of those is academic self-efficacy. And so even for us, when we think about our children, even for the ones that start out that aren't necessarily doing well in school, they may have a passion for baseball, but even when we start thinking about sports in general, it is a proven antidote to mitigate trauma. And the stress that a lot of our children are facing in the communities that they live in, and many of them financially not being able to afford to be able to have the sports outcomes, coming with us and being able to move and understand how to go from not being able to throw a strike to now throwing several strikes, not being able to hit a ball to now hit home runs, them seeing that deliberate, structured practice routine, now they're able to use that same thing in the classroom. Other things like self-management, self-confidence, contribution, social skills. These are all the social emotional learning capacities that, quite frankly, a lot of children that come from middle and upper middle class households have a sufficient amount of, because of the amount of support that they have, not only in their homes, but inside of their community. And so that's one of the things that racism does, is it just really strips away your ability to have a sufficient amount of those social emotional learning capacities. But again, just through the power of baseball and tennis, we're able to fill up their cup with more of what they need.
Yeah, great analogy. And what I really admire is because a lot of role models are in sports. Yeah, the big baseball, basketball, a lot of tennis, etc. Elaborate how sports, particularly baseball, can be a powerful tool for social justice and social emotional development of youth. I know you touched upon it a little bit, but elaborate more.
Yeah, from a self-confidence standpoint, for me, growing up, even though I lived in Northwest Atlanta, which was a poverty-stricken community, I got a chance to play baseball in Southwest Atlanta. And so when you look through the history books at civil rights leaders like the late Congressman John Lewis, the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King, Maynard Jackson, who was the first African-American mayor in the city of Atlanta, and then even Hank Aaron. All of these people lived in the community where I played baseball. And so for me, being able to play a sport where there was so much support gave me so much confidence. And not only for me, but hundreds of kids that lived in the community. When we think about baseball as well, too, we think about the Atlanta Braves that originated in Milwaukee, but they moved to Atlanta, becoming the first major league sports team in the South. And the reason why there were no major league sports teams is because it was against the law for Black people and white people to be together. It was that move for the Braves, and Hank Aaron, who's now, he's the late Hank Aaron, but he hit a home run to break Babe Ruth's record. He hit a ball that changed laws. So that's an example. And then even we start looking at sports like tennis, which is a sport that people play for a long period of time. Here in Atlanta, it's tennis is very popular still, and you have folks in their 80s that are still playing for recreation and some competitively. And so when you have Black girls that's in our organization that can really start to understand the game as early as 8 years old, and through our organization and the supporters that we have, you have some of the most powerful people in the city of Atlanta. And let's just focus on the women, Black and white, that are now connected to our organization, Lead Center for Youth, and now they're connected to Black girls who don't have the same social capital. So now, just by them being engaged, you got Black girls that's showing up on the tennis court essentially for a job interview every time they go out there. So now that's changing community through sweat and just seeing girls progress. So when we started looking at those things and the power of sport, and I'll just say even lastly to the power of sport, we just finished the Olympics. And the fact of the matter, although it is about sports, a lot of it has to do with real estate as well too. It gives these countries an opportunity to show off their country to different people. There's a large amount of property in Atlanta that's not even owned by Americans. And I'm willing to bet that the 1996 Olympics that opened up our city to so many other people helped make that possible. So we're just excited about what we get an opportunity to do to expose our children to baseball and tennis, which also ultimately improves their social capital.
Yeah, I really love that how you can take an idea and create social change, create more opportunities, but it's all about bettering the next generation. Another question on my mind was because, a lot of individuals, they use sports as a stepping stone. Like some of them get a college scholarship and they have ambition business or career in other medicine, dentistry, law. And then some of them actually go and play professionally, really top notch. So how does your organizations help with that to help guide athletes into careers of their choice where they prosper?
Yes. So once they get to the high school level for our Lead Ambassadors program, our mission is to develop our boys and girls to be major league players and major league citizens. So as I mentioned before, major league citizen means they're gainfully employed, civically engaged, and a radical philanthropist. And so with that being said, there's so many sectors out there because when you think about sports, obviously you need attorneys, you need marketing, publicists, all the way down to someone who can help making the car buying process simple, clothes, food, homes. So with all of these different things, at some point, if the students are not good enough to stay in our organization on the baseball field, or on the tennis court, they can remain involved as far as our front office positions. And so even within what we do, there are marketing needs, social media. There are needs when it comes down to handling logistics for our events. Anybody that's in our organization is always going to have one foot on the field in the court, one foot in the community. And so with that being said, there are endless opportunities for them to get experience with us. And again, if they're gainfully employed and we get them to be radical philanthropists, then the more money that they make, the financial capital and the social capital, the more money that we can raise so we can continue to do programming. So we strongly encourage them to not only win on the field, but just ultimately win at the game of life.
Interesting. And I love, so in your fundraising efforts, is it corporate? Is it government, private entities? Talk about your fundraising efforts and to help perpetuate your mission.
Yes. So a third of it is individual support. A third is corporate sponsorship. And then a third is through foundations grants. And that's a very good mix for us. But when we have those conversations with the corporate sponsors, what we're letting them know is that we are a social enterprising organization, even though we are a nonprofit, but we have lots of value that we can extend to those corporations. One, that investment in us is preparing possible future employees for that company. And so we've had success where program participants of ours have gone on to work for our sponsors. And then also too, just for our athletes, at least in the state of Georgia, it is Georgia law that high school age students can get paid for their name, image, and likeness. So we have student athletes that are able to be a part of the branding and marketing efforts for companies. because at the end of the day, companies can only give what they have. And so if they're not making a lot of money, they can't give a lot of money. So that's why it's incumbent upon our athletes when they're with us is to make sure that they are continuing to develop on and off the field, which yields financial support for us as an organization, but also financial support for them individually.
Interesting. How can people find out more about the work that you do, support your work? I know you're very active on podcasting and social media and get in contact with you.
So, lead, we cannot have fun without funding. So, we definitely need financial support. And the website is leadcenterforyouth.org. So, that's lead center, then FOR youth.org. And on there, you can find all of our social media handles on there. My personal website is imcj.com, and then Stewart with STEWART as in Tom. And I have all of my social media handles on there as well. And yeah, we are not shy when it comes down to asking for financial support, but we definitely bridge the gap between the money that you donate and the impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Really, and I love talking to social activists, entrepreneurs, and for the audience, be sure to check out CJ's organization, Lead, and all these resources will be in the show notes. And thanks so much for coming on and such a engaging discussion.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing.